Hey, good morning, everybody. So we're back. We're continuing near the bottom of Daf Tet Zayin Amud Aleph, Masechet Beitzah. We're going through now the dinim related to Eruv Tavshilin, which, as we mentioned, is very, very relevant this year. Nobody in the Shiur is going to forget to do an Eruv Tavshilin before Rosh Hashanah. So actually, the Gemara today will talk about what happens. See if we get there today, maybe next week. But what happens if somebody does forget to do an Eruv Tavshilin? Is there any recourse that you have? So we are near the bottom of the Amud. About 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 lines from the bottom. Even 3 lines from the bottom. Right, we saw yesterday these two dinim that we saw that what is considered the cooked food, which you can use for your Eruv Tavshilin. So we said, maybe surprisingly, even the lentils that are stuck to the bottom of the pot, you scrape them off, and you can use that as long as it has a kazayit, or the fats that are on the knife, and you scrape that off. As long as that has a kazayit, that could still be the Eruv Tavshilin. Try and imagine a reality whereby the fats that's left on the knife comes to a kazayit, and that's probably, hopefully, not something that would happen today. Okay, so now it says the Gemara like this. Next case, 3 lines from the bottom. Rav Asi Amar Rav. Says the Gim Ktanim Meluchim Ein Bahem Mishum Bishulei Nochrim. Okay, so you have these small fish. The Gemara talks about different types of fish that they would make. There were small fish and there were large fish, and maybe some type of herring or something like that. So it says Amar Rav Asi Amar Rav Dagim Ktanim, these small fish, Meluchim, small salty fishes. The way you prepare them, you don't cook them, you just salt them, and they're eaten raw. So ein by mishum bishulei nochrim. There is no bishul nochrim on these because they don't need to be cooked. And the din is when it comes to bishul akum, i.e., food that Chazal made a gzeira. Have a look at Rashi. It says ein by mishum bishulei nochrim shegazru chachamim bishulei nochrim mishum chatnot. Chazal made a gzeira on food which is cooked by a non-Jew. They don't that one cannot eat that. Again, we're dealing with where all the ingredients are kosher. If not all the ingredients are kosher, then you can't eat it because of kashrut. But bishul akum actually has nothing to do with the kashrut of the food itself. But Chazal made gzera mishum chatnut in order to prevent intermarriage, and therefore create that sort of distance. And therefore, al shenechal k'mo shu chai lo gazru. However, the gzera does not apply to foods which are eaten raw. Okay, and very important, food which is eaten raw, even if it's cooked. Therefore, the cooking we consider to be insignificant in terms of this. There are two. The Gemara of Avodah Zarah tells us there are 2 conditions, 2 parameters which are required when it comes to bishulei nochrim. The food has to be a food which the cooking is significant to it. It can't be eaten raw, and it has to be what's called oleh al shulchan melachim. Means it would go on the table of kings, meaning it's a significant food. Lots and lots and lots and lots of discussion today as to what is considered oleh al shulchan melachim and what's not, and how do we define that? And normally we have machlokot about that. Okay, but what concerns us now in our Gemara is the following: that these small fish they can be eaten raw. You don't need to cook them. Therefore, there'd be no din of bishul akum. Right? You're asking yourselves, what on earth has this got to do with Eruv Tavshilin? We'll get there very, very shortly. So, lo gazru al bishul, says Rashi. Tekevan shenechal k'mo shu chai. Eino bishul, it's not considered cooking. Since you could eat it raw, the cooking itself doesn't really do anything. These are eaten raw because they are salted. Okay, so now says the Gemara as follows. Therefore, so Rav Asi said in the name of Rav that there is no bishul nochrim regarding these small fish. Now says Rav Yosef, im tzal'an nochri. And therefore, even if the non-Jew cooked them, or roast them, whatever, you could still designate them for the Eruv Tavshilin. That's the Chidush, right? So you might have thought, okay, it's allowed, it's permitted to eat, but you have to cook it in order for it to be considered for the Eruv. So it says here that is not the case. Now, that's if you're just eating the fish by itself. However, if the non-Jew came and cooked them and he was a gourmet chef, and he said, I don't just want to make salted fish, I want to make kasa de harsana. What is kasa de harsana? This is a type of fish dish that's made with flour. Says Rashi, kasa de harsana metugan b'shuman kivei dagim uva kemach. It's fried with the fish fats and with flour. So that we say is going to be asur. That is forbidden. Says Rashi, asili the kemach minechal einechal k'mo shu chai. You cannot eat raw flour, right? And therefore, flour is only when it's cooked, and therefore flour would be considered bishul cooked. So if you are cooking this fish dish that's got the flour in, if that was done by a nochri, so that is going to be forbidden to eat because of bishul hakum, and it's going to be obviously if you want to eat it, you can't use it as part of the eruv. Now says like my pshita, that's obvious. Obviously, the kasadasana is going to be mishum bishul nochrim, right? Why do I need to tell me? Why do you need to tell me that? So it says you might have thought the following over the page now on Talmud Bet. Halsana ikar. So we know that in many areas of halakha it comes up in Ilchot Brachot, comes up in Ilchot Kashur, all sorts of places, that we have a concept of ikar and a concept of tafel. We have the primary food and the secondary food, right? All the time in Ilchot Brachot, a person eats, I don't know, a person has a potato bureka, right? So on the outside it's got the pastry, and on the inside it's got the potato. So watch it. So you don't say two brachot when you eat a potato bracha, but you have to ask. The question is, which is the ikar and which is the tafel? So we would say that the ikar over there would be the pastry, and therefore because it's mizonot, and therefore that's the bracha you'd say, and the bracha of mizonot is going to prepare for the potatoes as well. So here with this kasad hasna, you've got what? You've got the fish fats, right, and you've got the flour. So you might have said this was the avamina. Avamina was that harsana ikar. Says Rashi at the top of Amud Bet, he says Shumana Dagim. Right? You might have thought the fish fats, that's the main thing. The flour is just there. I don't know exactly what this dish is, but maybe it's to hold it together or whatever. Right? But we say no. We don't consider the hausana to be ikar, we consider the flour to be ikar, and therefore all the dinim still apply of bishulakum, etc. Kamash malan. That's what it comes to teach us, that kimcha ikar, that the flour is the ikar. And this is a principle that we have throughout Ilchot Brachot as well, generally speaking. If you have two components, how do you decide which is the ikar and which is the tafel? So there's all sorts of rules. Maybe it depends which one is in a greater quantity. Maybe it depends which one you like more. But generally speaking, before we get to that, if one of the two components is flour, is grain, is mezonot, so that's why most things which have mezonot, that's going to be the ikar. Okay, so that's what our Gemara here is telling us. Next in Amar Rabbi Abba. Okay, Eiruvei tafshilin shrechin kazayit. You need to have a kazayit. We've already seen this a couple of times, but if you have less than a kazayit for your eruv, that's not going to count. By the way, and Tosfot points out that there are different types of eruv which have different measurements. Right here we're dealing with an eruv tafshilin. We know there's what's called an eruv chatzerot. Eruv chatzerot is what allows you within the chatzer to carry from one house to the next. And that is, again, the way our cities are built, most of the time we're not really dealing with it. We're not really dealing with the chatzer. But if you've ever been through in Nachlaot or you go for a walk in Mea Shearim, you can still see all the older chatzerot, the way they're built. You have the gate on the outside, you have the courtyard inside, and all the houses are built around the courtyard, right? So there, on a Torah level, you could carry from one of the houses to the other. There's no Shutar Abim or anything like that. Chazal said, no, we don't want you carrying within the courtyard unless you have an Eruv Chatzerot. And there you need the amount of food is in Eruvin says you need a grogeret for each one of the houses. We have also an Eruv Tchumin. Right, an Eruv Tchumin is where you have a Tchum Shabbat, certain amount, Alpayim Amah, beyond the city limits, it's where you can walk. But if a person wants to extend that and wants to walk further, so they place an Eruv at that wherever it is before the end of the Tchum, and that extends the Tchum by another certain amount. Again, there the amount of food has to be the amount of food for two Seudot. Right, each one is serving a different purpose. Yeah, Eruv Tavshilin, we need a Kazayit. By the way, those are the three types of Eruv. I think I've mentioned before that the way we use Eruv today, it's really a misnomer. It's really, we use the word whenever you're talking about, you go to check the Eruv, or there's an Eruv around the city. It's not an Eruv Tavshilin, it's not an Eruv Tchumin, it's not really an Eruv Chatzerot either. What we mean to say is that you have a boundary. What we should really be saying, we're checking the Tzurat HaPetach, or something like that. Anyways, so when we say we need a Kazayit for an Eruv Tavshilin, here's the question, Amar Rabbi Abba, Eruv Tavshilin, Shvechin kazait, ibailu. Kazait echad lekulan, or dilma kazait lekol echad ve'echad. Right? Meaning, when we say you need a kazait, does that mean that in total the Eruv there has to be a kazait, or if we have a number of people that are relying on this Eruv, whether it's a number of people in the household or a number of households together, as we'll see, you don't necessarily need an Eruv for every single household. You could have one Eruv for the whole city. So if you have one Eruv for the whole city, does that mean that it has to be much bigger, much more food, that every person once around it needs a kazait? So right, that's the question. Kazait echad lekulan, or dilma kazait lekol echad ve'echad. So Tashma, so here's the proof. The Amar Rabbi Abba, Amarav, Eruvei Tavshilin Tzorchim Kazait, bein le'echad, bein le'mea. Whether it's for one, whether it's for 100, i.e., what we mean to say is it needs a kazait. It does not need kazait lekol echad ve'echad. It needs a kazait in total. Okay, we're on Tetzayin Amud Bet. Again, if you've joined late or you've lost the place, we are 6 lines from the top. Now, we saw in our Mishnah, it taught us the following. It said, Nan, achalo o she'abad, lo yivashel alav batchila. Remember, what is the Eruv Tavshilin? How does it work? We designate the food before Yom Tov, okay? And then on Yom Tov, we can, based on the fact that we have that food, we have that designation, we can prepare the food. We can now prepare food or do whatever we need to do for Shabbat. But the question is, when it comes to Yom Tov, I now want to prepare for Shabbat, but I don't have my Eruv anymore because I ate it, or because it was in the fridge and the kids didn't know that the egg was for the Eruv, and they woke up and they had the egg for breakfast, or because it went missing, or whatever it is. So that's what we said. You may not at this point cook based on it. However, if you left some of it behind, if there was anything remaining, then you can rely on that for Shabbat. So when it says you left behind anything. My kolshu, what does kolshu mean? Surely that means that if it's anything, even if it's less than a kazait, answers the Gemara, no, not to eat by kazait. No, kolshu means there's still a kazait left. Okay, I think Rashi pointed out. Yeah, you see what it says, Lord itbut by kazait, legabe kikav shalem, kalile kolshu. Right, a kazait of bread compared to a whole loaf, that's like nothing. That's a very small amount. That's why it's called kolshu, but it really means to say that you still need a kazait. Tashma, next. Tavshil zet tzali, v'afilu kavush shalok u'mevushal, v'kuliyas ha'spanim. Okay, what is this cooked food? How does it have to be? How does it have to be cooked? So he says if it's fine, if it's roasted, or if it's pickled, or if it's boiled, or if it's cooked. All those types of cooking, those are all sufficient. Even kuliasa ispanin. What is kuliasa ispanin? Again, it's a type of fish, which is a type of salted fish. And the way that is prepared, the way that is cooked, is nonin alav chamin me'elev yom tov. You pour boiling water on top of it, and that is the way that you cook it. You don't have to cook it properly. But
by the way, this fish does not exist in Israel, but if you go to Holland, to Amsterdam, it's quite prevalent. They sell it in stands like they sell here, falafel in stands. I remember we went with the AACI, and the counselor took one of those little things and swallowed it right away. Those are little fish, and they're not cooked. They are, and we asked him, how can you eat it? How do you know? Be sure. He said, don't worry, nobody touched it. There's no problem. Nobody cooked it. It just pickled, and that's it.
Huh. Okay, so Moshe's going to take us all on an excursion to Holland so that we can taste the food.
Yeah. I used my name.
Okay, so fair. So this is this kuliasa ispanin. It comes up in the Gemara Shabbat. Over there, the discussion is regarding what are the gedarim of bishul, what are the parameters of cooking on Shabbat, and if you want to know more about that, well, you need to come to the Tzoma Rabbanan Shiur on Sunday. Okay, but yeah, so see Rashi says kuliasa ispanin. He says dagma liachu velach. This is a salted fish and it's soft v'nechal k'mo shu chai, and it could be eaten raw. But they pour hot water on top of it, and that is the way it's cooked. As we see in the Mishnah in Masechet Shabbat, zoi gmar melachto. In this case, washing it, rinsing it, but in this case with boiling water, that is the cooking of this food. Okay, so the point is all different types of food. That's the way that you cook it. That's the way it's prepared. Fine. That can be used for the eruv tafshilin. Obviously, if food is completely raw, you can't use it. We said tafshil. So even though that could be, like we saw the dagim ketanim before, but that's enough. That's enough to cook it, and that could be the eruv tafshilin. So if you're in Holland, you can use your kulyas spanin for your eruv. Okay. Continues the writer. Tchilato v'sofo ein lo shiur. Again, we're trying to understand the parameter of having a kazayit of the tafshil. But here it says tchilato v'sofo. Its beginning and its end. That's at the beginning when you designate it, and I guess at the end when you're using it to prepare for Shabbat. Ein lo shiur. There's no shiur. So ma'ilav ein shiur. Ein lo shiur klal. What does it mean? There's no shiur. Surely that means that even if you have less than a kazait, you could therefore rely on it. Lo, ein lo shiur lemala, aval yesh lo shiur lemata. What it means to say, in fact, is that it has no maximum measurement, but it does have a minimum measurement, which is a kazait. Amar Rav Huna. We continue. Next step. Amar Rav. Eruvei tavshilin tzrechin da'at. Okay. So now he says, when you remember, at the end of the day, truth is that a lot of the things that we do are things that we would do normally, but we just add a certain designation for them. You know, if you think about it, sometimes, for example, right, what essentially are we doing with the eruv tavshilin? We're just taking a cooked food. We're certainly cooking food all the time. So what could a person say? Oh, well, I forgot to do the eruv tavshilin. Well, I didn't forget to do the eruv tavshilin, but I have this cooked food in my fridge, and I'll just call that the eruv. No, you have to have intent. You have to have da'at. You have to know what you're doing before Yom Tov. Okay, it might have been a food you were going to cook anyway. That's fine. But you've cooked it, and now you take it, you lift it up, you make the designation, you make the bracha, whatever it is. So that's what it means when we say tzarich da'at. Now the question is, when Ravona Amarav said tzarichin da'at, what exactly did he mean? We say pshita da'at maniach. I understand, obviously, the one who is establishing the eruv, the one who is designating the eruv, needs to have intent, needs to have da'at, needs to know what they're doing. That's obvious, right? Pshita da'at maniach ba'inan. The question is, however, da'at mi she'enichu lo ba'inan or lo. But the person for whom you've made the eruv, the person for whom you've designated it, do they need to know about it as well? Right? So what do we mean? Who's the person you might have made the eruv for? As I said, within the household, generally people will know. But you can do it on behalf of somebody else. So what's the question here, right? So we might think, maybe let's just see Rashi. Let's see Rashi for a second. Where he said tzrachim da'at, she'edu she'lashem kach nasu. People need to know that the eruv, this food, was designated for the sake of the eruv. Rav Huna lo piresh da'at mi. Rav Huna didn't explain who needs to have the da'at. Vashinan la'anan. We explain v'amlinan. Havadai pshitalan. D'chiyam Rav Huna tzrachim da'at od meniach. Miabai, right? When we say that you need to know. So obviously, it means the one who is designating the eruv needs to have iu adif she'oseu l'shem kach, right? That's what he's doing it for. Miu mibaya landat mi she'enichu letzorcho. However, we're saying, what's the question? The one who you made the eruv for, do they need to know as well? Right? Let's say my friend doesn't know how to make an eruv tavshilin, and he says, "Can you please make the eruv tavshilin for me?" Okay, well, if he's asking you to, then he knows you're doing it, right? But the question is, does he, right? Exactly. Does he have to come and ask? Does he have to come and request it? Does he have to know that it's being done? Now, you might think the following. We have a principle throughout halacha called zachin la'adam shelo b'fanav, right? When I do something for somebody else, if it is a zchut, if it is something which is going to benefit from, he doesn't need to know about it. If it's a chovah, that's different, right? So let's say, so I want to buy somebody a gift. If we do this, we shouldn't make a transfer of objects, kinyan, on Shabbat. So if I'm going to somebody, I want to give somebody a gift on Shabbat. So what's the best way to do it? Is that before Shabbat, I will give the gift to somebody else. I'll say, will you lift this up? And you lift this up. And you take ownership of this gift, not for you, but for the person I'm going to give it to. Right? They don't even know about it, but it's okay. Who doesn't want to receive a gift? Okay, so but that's a philosophical idea. So the point is, I can move something into somebody else's ownership. I can have them acquire the gift without them even knowing about it, because zachin la'adam shelo b'fanav. This question comes up in terms of Giur, many difficult shaylas in the realm of Ichut Giur, but one of the reasons why a katan, that there is such a concept of Giur Ktinim, right? Somebody who is, in order for a person to convert and join the Jewish people, first for mitgayer, they have to accept upon themselves all mitzvot, right? So the question is, you have a child who doesn't have that. The child can't accept upon themselves they can't decide they want to accept all mitzvot. So how can that conversion be valid? The answer is zachin la'adam. We consider it a zchut for that individual to become Jewish. Now, where the big controversial contemporary issues come up is what happens if somebody is going to convert. Let's say the family is not observant at all. So this child, right, they're going to be raised, they're currently not Jewish. If they're going to be raised as a Jew, but they aren't going to observe any of the mitzvot, is that considered a zchut, or is that not considered a zchut? On the one hand, you'd say, one says it's a zchut for the person to become a Jew. On the other hand, you're now going to make them obligated in all these things, and they're going to be chayav, probably wouldn't be chayav for the punishments because they don't know about it, etc. But still, they're going to be liable for, now they're responsible for keeping Shabbat and keeping kashrut, and they're not going to do any of that. Maybe that's not a zchut, maybe that's a chovah. Okay, but that is the concept of zachin adam shelo b'fanav, and it comes up throughout halacha. So regarding the eruv tavshilin, right? If I make an eruv for somebody else, it's a good thing. They're going to benefit from it. So what's the problem? I can do it. Why do they need to know about it? On the other hand, they need to know about it because they have an obligation. Who says that they can rely on the eruv if they don't know? They're just now coming and cooking on Yom Tov for Shabbos. They made no eruv tavshilin. They didn't know I made one for them. They are a posheah. They're being negligent. Okay, so that's the question. That's when we say it, right? So Tashma, listen to this proof. Shmuel's father, we would make the eruv for the whole city of Naharda. Rabbi Ami v'Rabbi Yasi ma'ava kulu Tveria. They would make the eruv, when they made their eruv tavshilin, they would do it for the whole city of Tveria. I.e., we see here that's did they go around to every single person and ask them if they wanted them to make an eruv? No. So that seemingly that is an indication that you can make the eruv, and the person you made the eruv for doesn't need to know about it. But it's not so simple. Let's carry on. Machriz Rabbi Yaakov Bar Idi. Rabbi Yaakov Bar Idi would get up in Jul and he would say, anybody who hasn't made an eruv tavshilin, you can rely on mine. I made one for everybody. That kama, what's everybody? Amar Nachumi Bar Zcharia, Mishmei Abai ad Tchum Shabbat. Everybody is within the Tchum Shabbat. It's not that, the Vashim explained. It's not that there is an intrinsic obstacle to making an eruv for people who are beyond the Tchum Shabbat. It's just that we said, certainly you need that of the one who is designating the eruv. So he wasn't designating his eruv for every single person in the world, right? That's ridiculous. So he put a cutoff point. He said, I'm making the eruv for everybody who's within the Tchum. Therefore, everybody in the Tchum can rely on it, even though you didn't know about it at the time when I designated the eruv. So now we have a story, and this is going to tell us really the parameters of when one can rely on the eruv that they did not make, they did not know about, and when not. So it says, how samya, there was a certain blind person, and he was learning Mishnayot with Mar Shmuel. Shmuel saw that he was very sad. So he said, why are you sad? What's wrong? Right? He said maybe he just realized that he forgot to make an eruv tavshilin. He's not going to be able to eat on Shabbos. Right? He's not going to be able to cook his food. So Shmuel says, Amar le smoch adidi. He says it's no problem. When I made the eruv tavshilin, and right, and this is where we learn it from, that the Rav of the city, when he makes his eruv, he makes the eruv for the entire city or for the entire congregation. He says you can rely on mine, no problem. Leshana chazed avatziv. Right, a year, maybe it's not necessarily a year later, but at a later stage, when once again it fell out like this, that there was a Yom Tov before Shabbat, so Shmuel saw again that he was upset. He said, why are you upset? He said, I did not make an eruv tavshilin. Okay, so what do you expect Shmuel to say at this point? Expect him to say, okay, well, we already learned this halacha. You can rely on mine. He says, Amare posheata. This is not so fast. He says, now you're negligent. You know, it happened once, you forgot. Okay, fine. Happened again. Well, no, you are not able to rely on my eruv, right? So obviously, if you had that in the first place, if in the first instance, right, the person said, I'm making an eruv for me and the next household, the next household, the whole street, right, and you said, okay, please, can you make the eruv for me, right before Yom Tov? Okay, you didn't forget. You're asking somebody else to do it, asking somebody else to be your shaliach or whatever it is. That's fine. But if you forgot, so you forgot once. So, okay, but you're doing more than that. So then you become a posher, and the poskim discuss how many times a person forgot, twice or three times, or is it possible that a person just decides, I'm just not going to do the eruv, I'm just going to rely on the eruv of the Rav. So based on the story, that is not so, does not seem to be so straightforward. And therefore Shmuel says to him, posher, since you're posher, lekule al mashari, my eruv works for everybody else, but ledidach asur, but for you it doesn't work. Okay. Beseder. Okay, I think we'll stop there for today. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Shabbat shalom, and we'll see you next week. Yeah, a question. Yeah.
Yeah. The das doesn't include the person who is cooking or baking the food, right? Das.
No, so we said the person who is designating the eruv has to have the
Who's designated, not the person who is cooking the food.
No. That's not, because we saw that even it could be an ochri could cook the food and you could still use it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Assuming there's no problem with bishulei akum, etc. Yeah. All right.
Shabbat shalom lekulam.
Shalom.
Thank you very much.